It's the nuclear power plant at the centre of international concern in the Ukraine-Russia war. Both working reactors at a Russian-held nuclear power plant have been disconnected from Ukraine's power grid for the first time in its history, amid fears of fighting near the plant could cause a nuclear accident.
The state nuclear company says fires broke out in the ash pits of a coal power station near the Zaporizhzhia reactor complex and interfered with power lines connecting the plant to the grid. Well, let's talk now to Sola Talabi, who's Professor of Nuclear Engineering and Radiological Sciences at the University of Michigan. He's also the principal of nuclear research firm Pittsburgh Technical. Welcome to the programme, Sola. So the nuclear plant, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant, reportedly disconnected from the Ukrainian power grid. What does this mean? What are the implications?
I think there's severe implications for Ukraine. The power plant, the 6 units of that power plant produce 5,700 megawatts of electricity, and that's about 20% of the country's electricity needs. And so it could have some significant, maybe even devastating humanitarian and certainly economic effects to the country. Now, there are substitutes, but it's not that straightforward to just switch from one generation source to another because of distribution, grid capacity issues, et cetera. So the losing 20% of power supply is potentially significant.
What about safety fears surrounding this, though? What's your understanding of the current situation there now? How safe is it?
So it's a good question. And I think one thing to note and that folks need to really be cautious about is that just because the plant is shut down doesn't mean it's still not at severe risk. It's those plants have what's called decay heat. And so even after the plant is shut down, they're still extremely hot and very dangerous. And still that cooling requirement has to be maintained. And so the plant has been and continues to be under tremendous amount of stress. When we think about nuclear safety, there are 3 Ps. You have the people, the processes, and the physical facility. Those 3 Ps have been and continue to be under tremendous amount of stress. The people are working under duress, so they're under stress. The processes, nuclear power plants are very procedural. Those processes are under stress because things are not working really as they've been designed to. And the physical facility, certainly we've seen with the shelling, that the physical facility is under stress. And to that point, the issue is anything that's under sustained stress, no matter how well designed it is, will eventually fail in some way, shape, or form. And the question is how, where, and when.
So what will happen now if these reactors have been disconnected? How could they potentially be reconnected? We're hearing reports that Russia is maybe planning to connect them to its own power grid. Is that a possibility?
So it is a possibility, but it may not be that easy. And so you have the plant and you have the architecture for evacuation of power from the plant. And so the grid has to be designed to be able to accept power from that plant. So it's that grid, wherever they're trying to take power to, has to be able to receive that additional load and coming from that direction. And so it's possible, but it would probably require some engineering and some infrastructure because it initially wasn't planned to receive that additional load. It's not impossible, but it's not that straightforward.
And there has, of course, been heavy shelling at the site. Presumably that's also an additional concern.
Oh, yes. And so the key with nuclear power is keeping these plants cool. And you have some critical equipment that serve that function that are outside the containment structure, the fortified concrete structure, which is pretty secure. So things that are related to electricity supply for cooling and the backup diesel generators that are required for cooling, those things that are outside the reactor are certainly prone to this risk of the shelling. And also the spent fuel, the dry spent fuel is stored at Zaporizhzhia outside the reactor containment. And if those dry casks are affected, you could have potentially radiological release, and what's sort of equivalent to what's called a dirty bomb, in that the radionuclide particles would spread to the extent that the blast can take them. So it's there are quite a few risks here. These plants are not designed to be under this type of sustained military assault, and we certainly really need to look at demilitarizing the plant.
Professor Sola Talabi from the University of Michigan, great to get your thoughts today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.